All right, show me the money. NFL picks for week number 18 are here on the podcast. Feels weird that we have 18 weeks of football, but join me today, the host of the Sports in the Waiting Room podcast, Christopher, not the Mad Dog Russo, is here. Christopher, how are you?
Pretty good. I actually was referred to for much of my schooling years as the Mad Dog, believe it or not. But yeah, I'm doing all right. I think Joe Buck said going into they were previewing Week 18. This is a weird thing to say. Week 18 next week, and yeah, it's very very odd.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, this year I figured, it's a good time to get you in here. We're sort of the New York sports people, so we're going to sort of do a little autopsy here on the two New York teams. That sound good to you before we get to the picks?
That's a very good way to define it. Yeah, at least for football. Yeah.
Yeah, for football. And we can do the positive first. We'll start with the Jets. I mean, the Jets come out here. They play hard against Tampa. They're winning most of the way. They end up losing late. I mean, we can talk about the whole bizarre Antonio Brown thing, too, where he just basically rips off his uniform and leaves the field. But what's your big takeaway from Jets Bucks?
Well, first off, they should have won. I will say I did not. I was away from home. I didn't really watch most of that game. I try to catch most of the end of it on my phone, but that's a game they definitely should have won. I like that they went for it on 4th and 2 because you're trying. Look, it's a Jets team that, of course, has been frustrated by Tom Brady for, it's hard to believe, but 20 years now. And you're playing for nothing. You're playing the defending champions. It's just a frustration move to go for it on 4th and 2. Just a game you're playing for nothing. But I didn't like the play call itself. I found out that apparently, I think it was Salah said LaFleur or something like LaFleur gave Wilson the option to sneak, whereas they could have gone with something else, and Wilson took that, and just a whole misinterpretation. I would have. I mean, with a guy that size, it's one thing if Tom Brady's going to sneak the football from 4th and 2. Truth is, if you're going to sneak, you should only do it on 4th and 1. But with a guy that's like smaller than me, and for to go 2 yards instead of one, it's just not really the physics of it don't work.
Yeah.
So I would have either handed it off to Carter. The run games looked really good for them the last couple of weeks, or maybe, I don't know, run a pick play with Barrios, something like that. They said they were going to end around to him. I think that really goes down to that play. But once you knew they didn't, once they failed on 4th down, I think you kind of knew just from watching the Jets for the last, forget 20, like 50 years, that Tom Brady was going to march down the field and win that game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that play call was right. You said he has either sneak it or hand off the Barrios, and whatever miscommunication happened. But for me, it's a loss, as a Jet fan, you can accept because they're playing with a very undermanned defense. So you knew as soon as Tom Brady got it back, he's going to go right down the field and score. The quarterback played very well. It's probably his most complete game as a pro, and they competed with a team that went on the Super Bowl last year. They were up for most of that game. It looked like the better team for a significant part of it. That's a big positive for the Jets. They've been playing well down the stretch.
Yeah, it really was a Pyrrhic victory for them. I would say, I mean, some people have said that the Buccaneers were undermanned, but the truth is the Buccaneers should have blown out the Jets regardless of their personnel anyway. So the fact that Jets even kept that close is I think, one, a detriment to the Buccaneers, but it's also a good mark for the Jets. And I mean, yeah, no, Godwin, I don't care. Who cares? Tom Brady made one of the best throws I've ever seen him make before. I don't know if you saw, there was like a 30-yard pass down the middle of the field to Gronkowski in this game. And I think it's maybe the best throw I've ever seen him make. And so somehow at 44 years old, the guy keeps defying age and logic. So I think the fact that Jets even kept this game close, and I even said last year, it wasn't even Brady that really won them that Super Bowl. I thought it was the defensive line that dominated. And so the fact they could put up 24 points on that team and do most of that in the first half was just impressive in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. And for me, I mean, look ahead to this week's finale against the Bills. I mean, they're not going to win the game. We know it. The Bills have too much on the line here with the division. It's a road game. So all you ask for the Jets, in my opinion, is go out, be respectable. Don't go out and get yourself lose this game 34-3. Like, go out there and be competitive in this game. We know you're not winning it, but put forth a good fight.
Yeah, they got destroyed by Buffalo back in November, and this was in East Rutherford.
Yeah.
I would say, I don't know, it's really tough. Look, the odds are they'd lose this game even if Buffalo was playing for nothing. But they can give them a run for their money at least. I mean, if they won this game, it would be somewhat similar to it would be the kind of the inverse of Rex Ryan in 2015 with Fitzpatrick playing for the Jets in Week 17. But that's not going to happen. If you can just play it close, obviously the Bills don't have an incredible run game. Play to that, and their defense is not nearly as strong as that of Tampa Bay. I think Buffalo probably would scare me more as an opposing team than Tampa Bay would, but Tampa Bay is obviously a more complete team. But I don't know. I would say this is going to be it's going to be closer than 45-17, I think, but it'll probably still be a fairly wide margin of victory, probably an expected margin of victory.
Yeah, they should win by double digits. I wouldn't be surprised if it's closer than that.
Yeah.
All right. And let's go to the other team in town, the New York Football Giants, who put up an absolute stink bomb against the Bears on Sunday. They lose 29-3. They can't even attempt to throw the football because Mike Glennon is inept at quarterback. It turns out now he's hurt, so Jake Fromm's going to end up starting on Sunday. And this was a complete disaster as a team that, the Bears, we all know, are firing Matt Nagy on Monday. It's a matter of whether it's after this game, whether he shows up to the office in the morning. But the Giants look like they not want to be there. That's a big problem.
Yeah, as opposed to the Jets game, as just a fan of good football, I'm very glad I was away from the television for this game.
Yeah.
This was maybe the most. The Giants may have lost by more points this year, but this was definitely their most, frankly, disgraceful loss of the year. It's like they lost with Dallas, but Dallas, you kind of understood. Plus, you already had Glennon out. I think the one thing that really I do not understand is why the Giants keep trying to make something out of Mike Glennon that he's absolutely not. I understand that Jake Fromm did not perform well against the Eagles, but I would certainly take Jake Fromm over Mike Glennon, especially after this week. It's look, if you have Daniel Jones at quarterback, it's not a huge difference considering the offensive line besides Andrew Thomas is that bad. But the Giants defense was actually fairly good in this game. Really, they let up only 13 points when you consider that two of the Bears touchdown drives, they drove for a combined 26 yards. They came off of turnovers. Giants turned over the ball 4 times. I mean, they had to go 2 yards on their opening drive just to score a touchdown. So really, this was up to Glennon and the offensive line. They let up 4 sacks. The one good thing I will say about the Giants this week, they finally stopped kind of coddling Saquon Barkley, and they handed him the ball a lot. He had, let's see, I had it here, 21 carries for 102 yards. I don't remember the last time they gave him the ball 20 times and let him run for over 100 yards. Because when he has a decent offensive line and can stay healthy, that's the other thing. I think the last few years, the Giants have been probably the most injury-prone team in football. That doesn't help them. But when you hand it to Saquon Barkley, you at least have a chance. Giants did a decent job with time of possession. The big difference was the turnovers and field position. That was the biggest issue for them Sunday, against the Bears team that is really marginally better than they are anyway.
Yeah. I think the play that started off that game very well was the kickoff sequence there where the returner for the Giants, Farrah Cooper, weighs it off and the ball's bouncing to the 3-yard line, then ends up having to cover it, fall on the 5. A couple plays there, there's a safety in the mix here. So that's a bad sign. This is for a coach who's preaching discipline and especially in his background. You can't do that.
Oh no, that's awful. There was a play. I remember there was a play a few years ago. Wasn't there one? I mean, that kind of showed what Buffalo was at the time. Didn't the Jets kick one off and then recover in the end zone for a touchdown? It was a plain kickoff. It wasn't an onside kick, and recovered in the end zone for a touchdown against Buffalo. And the Bills didn't know what was going on. This might have been before they blew it dead once it hit the end zone. But it was just disgraceful, and that's unfortunately the way you can put it for the New York Football Giants right now.
Yeah, for sure. And right now, all the heat's on the head coach here, Joe Judge, who has had a very interesting run here. I mean, did you hear some of the 11-minute rant he started off his post-game press conference with?
I heard maybe a couple of clips. I really saw pull quotes. That's about it. A couple of them. But from what I've heard, it's unlike anything I've heard from him in 3 years as a head coach, because he was a guy who seemed calm, cool, and collected, almost Belichick-like. And I'm not going to say of course, I'm not going to say he's the coach that Belichick is, but in terms of demeanor, maybe a little warmer than Belichick, but in terms of demeanor, pretty collected, calm, cool, didn't really call out anyone. And what I've heard of this discussion is unlike anything I've heard of Joe Judge in the last 3 years.
Well, our good friends over at SNY pulled the entire press conference. I went through here. I pulled out some interesting clips here. So we're going to listen to a couple of them and react to these. So let's start out here. Let's start out with the first clip I pulled from Joe Judge's press conference on Sunday afternoon after the loss to the Bears.
Now, you guys ain't been in the building for 2 years now with this coach. All right, but I'll tell you right now, All right. If you're in the damn building, you walking through our locker room, you ain't seeing that crap you saw before. All right. You ain't seeing guys right now planning vacations. You ain't seeing golf clubs in front of players' locker. You ain't seeing that stuff. Okay. You ain't seeing that. All right. And that's not because of some high school program we're cracking whip. It's because our guys understand how to play together as a team.
Okay. So let's get this one thing clear here. The bar is not like, oh, we're competing. It's you guys haven't been in the building because of COVID. We're doing all this great stuff behind the scenes. And the big progress here is that guys are not playing their tee times in week 17. That sounds great, Chris.
Yeah, again, it's unlike anything. It's unlike any of the style Judges had in his interviews before. He seems very, I think, defensive, to say the least, is probably the best word to put it. Because when you hear Belichick, he at least, and again, I know the comparisons to Belichick are unfair, and comparing anybody except Vince Lombardi to Belichick is unfair. But in terms of demeanor, he just kind of brushes it off. It just goes through it his own way. I think he's probably, the unfortunate way to say it is, I think Joe Judge is finally cracked. He's the media has finally gotten under his skin, and part of that's the media, but that's their job. That's our job. And he's just finally taken the pressure. And this is one of those things where, I mean, some of the Giants firings the last couple of years, I mean, that's how bad the Giants have been, that you could say multiple firings in the last couple of years of a head coach. But Pat Shermer was fired specifically because of on-field performance. Ben McAdoo, yeah, the team was pretty bad, especially his second year, but he had gotten them to the playoffs his first year. Really, he got fired because of fan uproar because he benched Eli Manning. And not just because of that, he benched him for Geno Smith. And with all due respect to Geno Smith, I'd take Eli Manning over Geno Smith, especially when he's respected as much as he was. This is the kind of thing where if Joe Judge ends up getting fired after this week, after the season, whatever, this is where we're going to be pointing. It's about how you did it on the field. It's about how poorly the team played on the field, but a lot of that comes to personality and just sort of a disrespect and a poor attitude.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like that clip. I feel like he was sort of defensive, sort of like, oh, knows that the job is slipping away from him. He sort of feels like, like we keep putting bad tape out there. I got to defend my process and show you, like, you guys can't see it, but we're getting better. So sort of like high behind, like, well, like, don't look at this flaming pile of dog poop over here. Look over here at all the stuff you can't see, but we're all bonding.
Look at this dog poop that's not flaming. Yeah. I should pull a clip from Billy Madison for that, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. I texted you and I said, I don't know if you knew about this, but I as someone who looks at Wikipedia constantly, I figured out that this was 2004, the ALCS, just a specific thing I was thinking of. Red Sox and Yankees, and it's when A-Rod slaps the ball out of Bronson Arroyo's glove, and the umpires rule it an illegal play. They rule him out, and Joe West was one of the umpires, and he apparently came out and said, and this was after fans were throwing stuff on the field, and they had to get the riot guard from the NYPD out on the field. He apparently said that before Game 7, when the Yankees had lost 3 straight games against the Red Sox, forced Game 7, that the crowd cheered the umpires as they came onto the field. That could not possibly be true, and that's kind of Joe Judge's sense of reality right now, where he's in denial. He's lost his sense of reality.
We're getting to more of these denial of sense of reality here. There's more clips here. So let's go to our next clip from Joe Judge. See what else you got to say.
I can tell you, we got more players here who are going to be free agents next year. All right, who are in my office every day begging to come back. I know that. Okay, I know that. The players that we coached last year that still call me twice a week talking about, how much they wish they were still here and they're getting paid more somewhere else.
Yeah, that's just complete, utter bullshit. No, sorry, pardon my language here. And you look at this, like all the players on last year's team, Bill Barnwell did a great thread on us on Twitter. It's like the vast majority of them got paid far less money to go somewhere else. And a lot of them are not either on rosters or in the league. And the 2 guys that are qualified, I think Galvin Tomlinson is on the Vikings, who are in playoff contention and were eliminated this week. The other one was BJ Hill. I think he was in Cincinnati. So, like, which of those 2 guys saying, you know what, like, screw my current situation, I'm going to come back to the Giants because that's where I want to be.
So he was talking about, I just want to clarify here. First off, did he say begging?
Yes, begging.
Oh God. Oh Joe. So that's one thing. That's look. If you're saying you want to come back, yeah, that's one thing I can understand. That it's a franchise that's won a lot, generally respected. But begging, that's not. That's not. And if you're going to beg, you're going to beg to the general manager. You're not going to beg to the coach. And then, oh boy, Dalvin Tomlinson and BJ Hill. Yeah, those are guys who have. Well, BJ Hill doesn't have an incredible career, but still, Cincinnati is a team that still theoretically could end up with a 1 seed after this weekend. And the Vikings are a team that, while their defense is, especially their secondary, has been pretty bad, they're a good enough team that they've competed this year. Yeah, I don't know what Joe Judge is talking about. That's a coach that is just trying to hold on for dear life. My brother actually told me about this. Might have been part of that thread. Was it Scott Simonson set out some tweet or something about how, oh, you know what, this was not about Joe Judge. Yeah, this is about Gettleman. But I mean, it's close enough, really, where he said something about misdiagnosing an ankle injury and something where this sounded harsh, but something about him actually being like a horrible person. I think he clarified that as to be about the ankle injury, but that obviously shows that unfortunately a bit of a culture problem in general with the Giants organization, if that is true. And so that's another concerning sign.
Oh, it absolutely is. And I mean, the whole idea of, oh, we have guys who want to come here. We have guys who left who want to come back. It's just sort of more screening to the first point. Like, look, like we're building a culture. People want to be here. Ignore the fact that our team stinks, but we are a place people want to be. We're building a family here.
Yeah, I would think if he means guys that want to come back, I would think he probably means guys that retired and want to come back just to help the team.
Yeah.
I would think that's probably how it works. I mean, so like, for example, if they were talking about Drew Brees maybe coming in for the Saints, I think I kind of said the Giants might have been better off, and maybe not from, but at least with Glenn. And I think I was like, for 1 second, I was thinking, could they bring Eli back? I feel like Eli maybe could still have a little left in him. I really like, if Tom Brady's still playing at 44, I mean, maybe Eli still got something.
Yeah, I think Eli's having too much fun doing the Manning cast to actually come back.
Oh no, of course he is, and Breeze is having the same amount of fun with NBC Sports. But it's like, for a second, you're seriously considering it. That's how bad they've been. So that's just where my mind went.
Yeah. Let's continue with Judge losing his touch on reality. I got another clip here. Talk about his time with the 2018 New England Patriots. So let's listen to this.
I've been a part of teams else places, okay? And I'm not trying to make this place anywhere else I've been. But lessons I've learned. Let me tell you something right now. All right. In 2018, I was part of a team who halfway through the season, all right, we were all pretty convinced we were getting fired. Didn't think we were going to make the playoffs. Had no concept that anything was coming. We just knew we were going to keep showing up and improving and working week after week. And on the outside, we were all terrible. We didn't care about any of that noise on the outside. Didn't care about it at all. What do you care about on the inside? What are we doing? Guys showed up, they worked, they fought, they worked. We were improving enough as a team and put things together and make a run and end up, win a championship. But the thing I really learned that year was the importance of the culture inside, how important and valuable that is. Because I was part of more talented teams that came up short and lost games down the stretch. Much more talented. All right. But the one thing that really was solidified in my mind, in my DNA that year in 18 was the fact that it's so much more important how strong you are inside, because no team goes through a smooth season. No team goes through a smooth season.
So I did some fact checking on his claim that they were all going to get fired in the middle of the season, 2018. Which, by the way, he was right. They didn't win the Super Bowl that year. There's the year they beat the Rams 13-3 out, I think, in the Mercedes-Benz Dome in Atlanta. Through week 9, halfway through the season there, the Patriots were 7-2 in clear control of the AFC East. So I have no idea what he was talking about. Like, oh, we're all worried about being fired.
I think I can actually understand what he means at this point, because I can tell you from working with different teams, a lot of the best coaches I know, even personally have known, are hard on themselves, hard on their own teams, even when the result looks good on the field or on the court or on the ice. So I can I think I might understand what he means there. And obviously that was the end of the Patriot dynasty. Well, the end of the Tom Brady Patriot dynasty. Let's clarify that, because the Pats look pretty good right now. But, you could look not too great and still be 7-2. And the other thing is the Patriots over the last 20 years have held themselves to such a standard of excellence that probably seemed mediocre to them. That they want to be as close to perfect as they can be. So I kind of understand where he's going, what he's talking about there. But the problem is, I think he's clearly calling out his team when he's making when he's talking about there's more talented teams that have lost, more talented teams that have lost, worse teams that have won. He's clearly making a comparison between the New England Patriots organization and the New York Giants organization. And I would say he's specifically doing that from a player personnel standpoint, not necessarily from a managerial standpoint, but definitely in terms of the roster, which is just an unfair comparison. And I think that's a veiled call out of his players.
Yeah, well, that's not great either. And he did have a lot of other points where media being like out of whack and all sorts of stuff. But I wanted to end with this last clip from Joe Judge's press conference about the standards the organization is living up to right now.
This ain't a team that's having fistfights on the sidelines. This ain't some clown show organization or something else.
That's a very low bar to clear. We're not fighting each other on the sideline.
Yeah, it's kind of like raising the bar on South Park. You're just you're not getting above much. They're going to need James Cameron, the oceanographer, to get in there. Anyway, I don't know if anyone will get that. Anyway, yeah, that's not really a high bar whatsoever. That's pretty much just saying, we're not Buddy Ryan and Kevin Gilbride punching each other on the sideline. And that's not saying much. You can have, frankly, you can have team turmoil and win. Look at when Odell Beckham Jr. was with the Giants, I want to say that whole stupid thing with the net was the year they went to the playoffs.
Yeah.
So again, you can you can have not much turmoil in the locker room, but if you're terrible, you're terrible.
Yeah, and they are terrible. I mean, you look at their last 5 games, they lost all 5 by double digits, 29 to Miami, 37-21 to the Chargers. Those 21 points came on a couple of garbage time touchdowns, 21-6 to the Cowboys, 34-10 to the Eagles last week in Philly, then 29-3 in Chicago. I mean, like, they're not even competitive. That's a problem.
The funny thing I will say is that some of those are actually kind of misleading in that the Dolphin game was pretty competitive for a while. The Eagle game was 3-3 at the half, but their offense was just that poor in the second half, kept turning the ball over, and the defense can only take – their defense is actually decent to good, but they can only take so much from the offense and how bad it is. And it's just inexcusable how the team overall is performing. It's absolutely true.
Yeah, and even Daniel Jones, when he was here, they were average on offense, but you can't just take him out of the line and be completely inept offensively. That's not a good look on your coach either.
No, I would say with Jones is actually, I think, a good quarterback if you put a decent offensive line in front of him. I think that's why Eli Manning's last 4 or 5 years of his career were so bad. He had like a 35. He had maybe the best year of his career in 2014, I think, 2015. And then the offensive line just kind of slowly went away. And that's been their biggest problem. Obviously, there's a problem with the entire team in terms of personnel, but that's been their biggest problem over the last 5-6 years is the offensive line has just been that weak. When Jones is healthy and has a good offense, we haven't even seen him with a good offensive line, really. I don't think he's reached his full potential, but that is this is true of any player, any quarterback. You need to have the right people around you. And Daniel Jones obviously does not have the right people around him.
Yeah, I think in terms of what's going on here, I mean, right now there's a lot of chat about, is he safe? Does John Mara think that he's an ex-Bill Belichick or Bill Parcells is completely out of line? But like I'll mention this year, it's like there's a theory flowing around from some people. I think notably SNY's Ralph Macchiano said, you can't fire him because you can't fire coaches every 2 years like they did with McAdoo, like they did with Shermer. My problem with that thing is like when you clearly have the wrong guy, and I think right now, the way the Giants are training, it's clear they had the wrong guy. You don't compound the mistake by bringing him back and, we have to give somebody extra run here because then you're firing Dave Gettleman potentially, you're letting him retire, and then you're either bringing in a Joe Judge crony or promoting within because nobody's going to want to take that job under these circumstances, and you're just kicking the can down the road. You got to blow the whole thing up and get it right one time instead of constantly cycling through like bad options or extending bad options because you don't want to look like you're firing coaches too often.
Yeah, this is not. And again, there are fan bases, I would say, that are a lot less spoiled than Giant fan bases are in that they've won 2 championships since 2007. They've won 4 since 1986, and they're like one of really, they're actually one of the 3 most successful franchises in the history of pro football. But the thing is, they're getting on a pace. It's still slow compared to that one, but they're getting on a pace of what the team was between 1965 and 1978, 79, where they never made the playoffs. The team was in constant turmoil, and I mean, it was like the point between Y.A. Tittle retiring and Bill Parcells and George Young and Phil Simms coming in and turning everything around, where there was turmoil within the ownership. And I think one of the Maras had sold his stake, and it was just a mess. And 5 years compared to 14 years, it's been 5 years since they made the playoffs. It's smaller than that, but if they keep going down this path, there's going to be far more frustration within the fan base than I would think there already is.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. They're talking about last week. They're talking about, oh, we'll come in here, put a chip on like which franchise is in better shape right now. If you watch these 2 teams, like you have to put the chip on the Jets. The Jets are not great by any means. At least they look like they're pointing in a direction and know where they're going. The Giants are literally rudderless in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, and I would say that, and again, obviously the Jets have been in bigger turmoil for a longer time, but the Jets have a more promising future right now. Wilson has finally awoken in the last few weeks since he came back from injury. I would say Saleh has been he's been fine. He's been okay. There's some trouble on the offensive line. I would say we don't really know what's happening with Becton, even though he's a very on-off player. I think the receiving core is actually a lot deeper than you think. And defense has been, their pass rush is okay, I would say, but they are certainly in a better place than the Giants are right now.
Yeah, and the Giants have a meaningless game on Sunday afternoon against Washington here, and the typical Giants have to win this game, ruin their draft stock, and not gonna get picks, and then had John Mara say, "Great, Joe Judge, the team hasn't lost him. He's coming back next year."
Yeah, I really don't know what to say. Look, there are a couple of differences I would say between the 2 years where Joe Judge has been head coach and right, I think it's just It's his second year, right?
His second year.
Okay. The 2 years when he was coaching, the 2 years when McAdoo was coaching, the 2 years when Sherman was coach, I'll give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt in that he had to coach through a pandemic, still coaching through a pandemic, really, and he had to coach through a shutdown to start his career with the Giants. It's a little more difficult to try to find connections with players and yada, yada. It makes things difficult logistically. I still don't think it's an excuse whatsoever. And I will also say, but this kind of applies to Shermer and McAdoo anyway, I legitimately think there is something wrong with the turf at MetLife Stadium because of how injured the Giants have been. Their skill players in particular have been. Think about how many injuries Saquon Barkley has faced. The game alone, where was it Beckham, Shepard, and I think Brandon Marshall all went down for the season in the same game. I think there is legitimately something wrong with that stadium, besides the color. Anyway, so again, there are a couple of things where I'll give Joe Judge the benefit of the doubt, but I think after that little outburst, I think when we thought before Ben McAdoo sat Eli, I think we thought, okay, he's probably coming back for a third year. But after it and after this little outburst by Judge, I think he's done.
Yeah, he should be done. But let's get to the pick. The reason why you're here this week. Joey Castellano was here last week on the picks. He had the rare 1-1-1. He had a win, a loss, and a push. He had the Chargers laying the 5.5. They blew the Broncos out. He got that there. He had a bad beat the Texans. He had them plus 13.5. And the 49ers kicked a field goal the last minute to cover the number. He had the Washington football team plus 4. That was a push because they lost by 4. So 1-1-1 on the week for him.
Yeah, that's a rarity.
Yeah. I had a 2-0-1 week. So just for interesting sake here, I took the Patriots laying 16.5 against the Jaguars as the lock of the week. They won by 40. I had the Packers. I locked in the number early, 6.5 points before Kirk Cousins got COVID and missed the game, but I would have won. I would have covered it if they had the bigger number. So that's 2-0 there. I went heads up with him on that Eagle watching football thing. I had the Eagles laying the 4. So that was also a push for me. So we both pushed on the same game.
Okay. Well, again, I am not, I am not the gambler, but I can predict. I can predict some things. So this week I went with first off.
We're getting there. 1 second.
Oh yeah, sorry about
that. Yeah. So on the year, the Challengers are 21, 28, and 2. So not a great year overall. I'm 27, 23, and 1. I've been nudging forward a little bit the last few weeks here. So we're going to go ahead now. We're going to start doing some NFL picks for the last week of the regular season. And Chris, as you are the guest, you're up first. Where are you going with your first pick of the week?
Well, I think this should be a fairly easy one. I think that, well, maybe not. I think the Jets actually cover against the Bills this week in Orchard Park. 16.5-point spread at last I saw. Jets played Tampa Bay down to the wire, and they probably should have won that game, frankly. And Tampa Bay's a better team than Buffalo overall. So I say they will keep it a bit closer, especially because it's going to be a lot colder, I would think.
Yeah, I like that number too, because I think the number's too big for the Jets. I think they've been playing hard down the stretch. Wilson's been playing a little better. Second time seeing Buffalo, he should be, at least I think Buffalo first time watching the sideline with Mike White played, so he should get an idea of what they want to do. I think they're going to be in this game for a while. I think Buffalo's going to win probably by 2 touchdowns. I think the 16 has a bridge too far, so I like what you're doing there.
Yeah, it was not Wilson last time. I figured it was Mike White, and he threw 4 picks in that game, and that really resulted in probably most of the points in that game, I would say, for Buffalo.
All right, let's go ahead. Pick number. Are you going with pick number 2?
Pick number 2. I am saying the Raiders will cover the 2.5-point spread against the Chargers in Las Vegas. Technically, I think it's either in Paradise or Henderson, Nevada. But I think the Raiders are going to cover. Not only that, I think the Raiders are actually going to win, even though I'd say the Chargers are probably the more talented team. The Raiders are trying to reach the playoffs for the first time since 2016. It's the first final week of the regular season in that building with fans there. And it's the first home game there since John Madden passed. It's going to be an emotional building. And I think the Raiders not only cover, but win this game and go to the playoffs.
I love that pick. I didn't do it because the game is tight, so props to you for that. But I think this is a spot where the Chargers are going to get ambushed here because this team is never good as a favorite. They usually are terrible when they have these kinds of spots here. They go on the road against a Raiders team that's filled with emotion. They had the Madden factor. The building, I mean, a lot of visiting fans go to Vegas, but this week, the Chargers fans don't travel. So we have pretty much a full Vegas crowd there rooting the Raiders on. That's going to be a very tough spot for the Chargers. I like having the points in that game.
Who can blame the Charger fans for not traveling? They're all in San Diego.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think anyone gives Derek Carr really enough credit. He probably should have won the MVP back in 15 before he shattered his ankle. He's a really underrated quarterback, I think, in this league. Last one. Yeah, last one. Bengals will cover the 2.5-point spread in Cleveland. I'm surprised it's actually that narrow for a Cleveland team that is out of the playoffs. And originally it was 1.5 before Baker Mayfield was ruled out, which is wild. But the Bengals are shooting for the highest seed possible. They could still get the 1 seed if they win. Denver somehow knocks off Kansas City, and by some miracle for them, Houston upsets Tennessee. That's going to be bad for them for a draft pick anyway. And Cleveland playing for nothing. Baker's not going to play. So, yeah, I will take the Bengals in that game to cover 2.5-point spread.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting pick there. I do like the line there. I think the Bengals obviously have home field potentially home field to play for. Joe Burrow is a question, which is why I stay away from that game, but I can see the logic. Yeah. All right. I'm up now with my 3 picks here. Pick number 1. I'm going to take an underdog here. I'm going to take the Dolphins getting 7 points at home against the Patriots in week 18. And Miami always plays well against New England down at Sun Life Stadium, whatever the hell the name of the stadium is now. And this is a spot here. Flores does well against the Patriots. They beat them week 1. They beat them a couple of years ago at the end of the season when Miami was terrible. New England was playing for a first-round bye. And I think here, this is a spot where New England is going down there. Mac Jones has not been great on the road so far this season. I think Miami says, you know what, we're going down with a fight. We're going to make their life miserable to deny them the division. I think the Dolphins have a shot winning this outright, but I'll take the 7 points. Pick 1.
Mike, first off, it's been pro player Joe Robbie, Dolphin Stadium, Sun Life, Land Shark for the beer, and now it is Hard Rock Stadium. And I think they've done a good job with the renovation. I think that's a good pick because I don't know why people called out the Dolphins so much entering this season and said they were really going to be underwhelming after last year. They went on a great run and they're going to miss the playoffs, but I think the fact that they won that many games in a row after a 1-7 start, I think is very impressive. And I think that's an organization in a good direction. They could keep it close with New England.
Let's pick 1. Pick number 2. These 2 lines don't make sense to me, so I'm going with them. I'm taking the Bucks laying 8 at home against the Panthers. And I know Tampa can't get home field, but they can play for the 2 seed, which means they get the second home game, which is massive for them. They want to put up a good effort after they struggled against the Jets last week and nearly won that game. And what is Carolina showing up for? What do they actually care in this game? I mean, they're completely out of it. They're 5-11. Sam Darnold has not played well all season long. And Tampa Bay laying 8 points. I think this game's going to be a blowout. I don't think Carolina's going to show up for this game. So give me the Bucks laying the 8, pick 2.
Yeah, I had high expectations for the Panthers, I think, going into this season. And then for the first 3 weeks, they were really good. And then after that Cowboy game in week 4, the team was an enigma, especially at quarterback, where they were quitting on Darnold so quickly. And then they went to PJ Walker. And then they went out and got Cam Newton, and they said that was a mistake. And I don't know where that organization is in limbo right now. That game should be a pretty large victory for Tampa Bay.
All right, that's pick number 2. Pick number 3 is one I also don't understand, considering the stakes on the line for the team involved here. I'm thinking Arizona laying 6.5 at home against Seattle. I mean, they're playing at 4:30, same time as the Rams. They are playing for the NFC West. Seattle is not good. They beat up Detroit barely last week. Detroit almost came back and won that game. Russell Wilson might be on his way out. You don't know how checked he needs to this game. Arizona played very well against the Cowboys last week. They have a shot at the division, and they're not going to know at kickoff that they're out of it because they play at the same time. And I only have to get a touchdown to cover here. I think this is a game where Arizona has a lot more on the line than Seattle, and they're home. So I'm going to lay the 6.5 points to the Cardinals, my last pick of the week.
Yeah, the Cardinals should definitely beat the Seahawks. I don't know if it's going to be a blowout, but they should definitely cover 6.5, especially because the Niners play the Rams. That's a potentially winnable game for the Niners. They could very well end up not only with the division, but the 2 seed at the end of this day. The Cardinals could.
And the 49ers have to win that game to get in the playoffs, because odds are if they lose it, they're out, because the Saints are probably going to beat the Falcons.
Probably, I would think. Although we don't know. I mean, Matt Ryan. You never know. It could be Matt Ryan's game last game in Atlanta. There have been rumors about that. You never really know.
All right, so to reset the picks here, Chris is taking the Jets plus 16.5 in Buffalo on Sunday. The Raiders getting 2.5 in the win or die game on Sunday Night Football, and the Bengals laying 2.5 against the Cleveland Browns minus Baker Mayfield. I'm taking the Dolphins plus 7 at home against the Patriots. The Bucks laying 8 at home against the Carolina Panthers, and the Arizona Cardinals minus 6.5 at home against the Seahawks. Those are your picks for Week 18. And next week, Super Wild Card Weekend. I'm gonna pick all the games with my buddy Dan DiMartini, a Colts fan, and his team should be playing there, bar something very strange against the Jaguars.
If they lose to the Jaguars, they deserve to miss the playoffs. Especially a Jaguar. Well, if they had lost with them with Urban Meyer, I think it'd be even worse. But losing without them, that's going to be. There will be riots in Indianapolis if they somehow lose to the Jaguars and miss the playoffs.
Yeah, that game's gonna be a little wild, because I mean, believe it or not, the Colts have not won down there since 2014, which is actually incredible if you think about it.
How is that possible? I mean, for a Jaguars team that, aside from 2016, has choked year after year forget choked. You have to be good at some point to choke. And so that really does not make any sense to me.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense either. I mean, you have reports of the Jaguar fans showing up dressed up as clowns to the game to send a message to Shad Khan about, our organization's a joke. We need to fire Trent Baalke and start over. And then you have this whole thing where if somehow they win this game, theoretically the Chargers and the Raiders could do the soccer style collusion and agree to play for a tie and both make the playoffs.
Which is going to be kind of disgraceful for the NFL if that happens, especially for the last game of the regular season, where we really want to see something exciting. But it's honestly, going back to the Jaguars, it's still a wonder how they have gone down that far after being this close to going to the Super Bowl against that game against the Patriots. So I don't know what has happened to that organization, but yeah, it should be the Colts. And I'm saying it's going to be the Colts and the Raiders end up with those last 2.
Yeah, I think it's the same. I make my picks: Colts, Raiders, the last 2 spots to the AFC. I think the Saints will get the last spot in the AFC. I think the Rams are going to close the division out.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards that, especially because the game is in LA or Inglewood. So yeah, I'd take the Rams in that one.
Plus, the Rams lost the Niners early this year, so they had that little revenge motivation here.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, thank you all the time. I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, I'll be a follow on Twitter and keep up with the Sports in the Weight Room podcast.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Chris Russo 98, ChrisRusso 98, and the podcast comes out once a week. We try to get it once a week as much as possible. It comes out on Wednesday, and so I'm actually going to be recording it not long after this, and we'll usually get it out in the late afternoon, early evening.
Sounds good, Chris. Thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it.
Hey, Mike, appreciate it. Good to see you.